Because when we look through the lens of Chinese medicine at health and the body, it's not always as simple as saying one thing equates to another thing. So it's not always that I've eaten one kind of food and that's created this problem, or I've had this kind of emotion happen to me and that's equated to this problem. It's much more of a holistic environment in there where things can influence another. So from a practitioner perspective, we're often called this detective, because we're trying to figure out what has influenced what and how has that spiraled into a whole different story inside somebody's body. And where am I going to begin correcting that? Do I start with the food? Do we start with the acupuncture? What is the actual issue that somebody has come in with? So if we're thinking about yin yoga, and I like to talk about it in terms of interventions, if the Chinese medicine practitioner has got diet advice, lifestyle advice, mental health advice, as well as their needles and their herbs as their interventions, in yin yoga, the main interventions that we're working with are the actual stress that we're placing on the tissues of the body because of the shapes that we're putting the body in and we're spending time there, and also the way that we use our breathing. And we really can't undervalue how important the breathing is. And so that's kind of a subsector of the kinds of things we might see on offer in a Chinese medicine practice. So it's a little bit more limited. And we don't have needles. We can't be as specific as the acupuncturist who might have just the right spot. And with very clever selection of where they put that needle, that might be the spot that reduces the headache, or that might be the spot that reduces the shoulder pain, because they're also working with their own alchemy with the needles and the body. So if we're putting the body into a shape such as half saddle, for example, it's one of my favorites. The target area is the front of the leg, the quad. Depending on where that leg is pointing, you might get a bit of the inner thigh. You might get that spreading feeling up along the front of the body, and depending on what you're doing with your arms. It's very broad, so we're getting this broad surface area of the body being targeted. But because of that tensioning of the tissue, we are playing with the fascia in the body. And the amazing work of people like Dr. Hiroshi Motoyama has quantified for us that the meridians do run through that connective tissue. So that is a big connection that yin yoga and Chinese medicine have made. We're playing in the same playground. And the pulling of the tissue, we would call stressing, that tensile application of stress that's applied to a target area in the shape, is a mechanism of playing with the fluid that is sitting in that connective tissue. So when that tissue is pulled, it changes the chemistry of what is being held there. The same kind of thing happens when you apply pressure to the body. That's what's happening in massage. You know, if someone's really tight and they've got a whole bunch of congestion in their connective tissue, and you've got a really good masseuse that applies pressure and a very particular speed in the way that they run their finger or their elbow or their knee or whatever body part they're utilizing on you across that tissue, and then they say that you've got to release. It's the pressure that is kind of changing the state of that fluid and releasing it. In yin yoga, we call that moment the melt. When you then come out of the yin yoga shape and you come into a rebound, I hope you get to come into a rebound because that's very important, that tissue is no longer under any stress. So for me, that's the definition of a rebound. Doesn't matter really what position you move into. Let's just say if you've come out of that half saddle, that the front of the quad is now no longer under any stress. So if you find it helpful to slide a bolster under the knees, or curl up on your side, or even roll onto your belly, they are all perfectly great places to rebound as long as that area gets to rest. It's in a restful position. And in that restful position is what we have been told is the place where fluid distribution reoccurs. So if the fluid has been kind of moved and changed because of the pulling in the shape, then the rebounding also affects the way that fluid can redistribute itself along that superficial connective tissue. So because of that, I think that in a yin yoga practice, we are exploring the movement of fluids and therefore the movement of qi in regions of tissue in the body. So of all those things that I said before that a Chinese medicine practitioner is going to be looking at and seeing if they can work with qi, blood, jing, shen, yin, fluids. Yin yoga is primarily working with the qi and the fluids, I believe. So the qi and the yin of the body. So after a yin yoga class, if it's been quite well-rounded and you've got to explore some of the really big regions of the body, the glutes, the quads, the side of the body, maybe the front of the chest, we will have moved the fluid in the body around quite a bit. You may even find after the practice that you feel a little bit thirsty. Qi governs all movement. That's what we're taught as one of the fundamental principles of qi. So if movement is being pulled and pushed across the tissues because of our manual application of tensile pressure and then releasing that, it is actually qi that is moving the fluid, because qi governs the movement of all things.